So Kevin, if you could introduce the staff and guests and.
Yeah, we'll start the camera first.
Yep, it's on.
Yeah.
Okay, 44. Great, good morning. So here this morning, as far as staff and guests, I'll start with our guests. We do have Hector de la Garza on the screen here. Hector's with Radial Power. Hector's here to join us for item 4 on the agenda. Our general counsel, Kevin Caracoli, is here. And then as far as staff, we have Austin Wheelock, our executive director. I'm Kevin LaMontagne. I'm the chief financial officer of the agency. And just off camera, Hector, is Nate Emmons, who works on the staff here at Operations Oswego County. Saving us on the technology this morning as well. And that's everyone.
Okay.
Other than the members, Nick.
Tim, can you do a roll call?
Sure. Nick Finale,
Present.
Mark Greco,
Present.
Trish Peter Clark,
Present.
Marianne Tusbro,
Here.
Isabel, I'm here, and then Pat Carroll and Gary Standard, I'm assuming, are excused. Right. Okay. So we have 4.
Okay, thank you. Notice the meeting was in the Pal Times on May 14th. And we have treasurer's report from April. Any comments or questions on the financials?
I have a couple of comments I can make. Some of the I'll start with the balance sheet, which is the first page of the figures in the financial packet. Again, much like with the last 2 months, I guess, there's money moving around with the pilots payments coming in from, and we'll talk about delinquent pilots and that status later in the meeting. But some pilot money has mostly come in by now and mostly been remitted to the taxing authorities. So we see both, it's on the third page of the balance sheet at the top, 631.2 pilots payable taxing authorities. At the end of the month, we still owed 182. That's money we had collected, and this is the money to be remitted. We let the checks clear and then remit the money. Usually 10 days to 2 weeks later. We have 30 days by code, so we don't drag our feet. But it's just at the snapshot at April 30th, we had some money due. It's sitting in our bank account, ready to remit. And then also we see income coming. We jump to the income statement next. We see income coming in to about a quarter of the way up from the bottom. 2770.4. We have 218,000, which is our share. We'll have additional funds coming in. In May, in the May statements mostly. Okay. But for the late pilots that we'll discuss.
Okay.
The other thing is basically on the income statement on the top line, the admin application and admin fees. We're pacing a little bit below last year. We had one closing that didn't move forward. But we still have a couple of closings we may be able to do by the end of this year. One for Dowdrop, SB, down in the industrial park, and then potential of closing some solar projects we'll discuss later in the meeting with Hector.
Plus LaChase as well.
Oh yes, yeah, LaChase and ConnectScares through the civic facilities, but the LaChase pilot and benefits as well. So that should put us in pretty good standing on revenue for the year. Costs, we did have some costs. We've had some CNS costs come through on the industrial park and also the wastewater treatment project in Schuylkill, and those costs have hit the pilot EDF expense, which is 7.0, very close to the bottom of the P&L. We'll talk about those in the pilot EDF report, and Austin will give an update on where we are with those projects. So, yeah, that's all I have.
All right.
No concerns to highlight.
Anybody else have any questions?
Just what is OCIP farm lease?
So we currently, the land that the IDA purchased, 185 acres expansion, until we develop it into the industrial park, we are continuing. There was a previous lease with CNY Crops, and we're continuing it now, which just helps to kind of keep the wetlands down and other things like that. You know, it's just good to keep it in production until we're ready to use it.
Okay. Can we get a motion for the treasurer's report?
I'll make a motion.
Sure. Mark? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 4, Vonley PV LLC and Vonley 2 PV LLC.
Sure, Hector de la Garza is here from Radial Power. I'd like to give a brief overview, Hector, and then turn it over to you to give some updates on some overview of your company and where you are with these projects and the timeline going forward. Like we've talked about all that in the past. Let me see, take this place folder. Very sorry.
Catch that. I don't think we did. Yeah, I think we need to, because I didn't catch that.
Couple minutes.
Well, why don't you guys do that? And I'm
I'll make
gonna
a
go get
motion
some
to
paperwork
approve the
from
minutes.
my office.
And Mark, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, sorry. I'm new with this.
Come on.
It's all right.
Okay, back to agenda item number 4. So I have here. Okay, there we go. Back in February of 2023, we approved 2 solar projects in Valmy to receive a pilot benefit, sales tax exemption, and mortgage recording tax exemption. These are the 2 projects located on Maple Avenue, which is just over the city line, basically from Fulton, on the other side of the tracks.
OCC or?
Yeah,
CCC?
yep, just south of that. One is Valmy 1 per se, but it's Valmy PV is 5 megawatts, and then Valmy 2 PV is 4.85 megawatts. So those projects were originally brought to us and developed. Site plan approval was obtained, and our approvals were obtained by RIC Development, a developer we've worked with a number of times. Now RIC has sold these projects to Radio Power, like we've seen before, and they're asking for consent. Hector, have both projects closed at this point?
Yes,
Yes,
both the
multi
projects
projects
have
yeah,
been
have been closed.
Yeah, one, right, exactly. So that we've been in touch with the company. We've been in, our legal counsel has also reviewed their organizational documents, their transaction documents and so forth, and basically okayed this, but they're asking for the IDA's consent to this ownership transfer. And Mel, maybe just for your information, whenever we have a project where we've approved a pilot or that's under a pilot, anything to do with the ownership or really mortgage financing, we need to consent to, because we're in that chain of title, or we will be with these projects when we close. With solar projects, what we found is nearly all of them have transitioned ownership before being built. So there's one
I've seen
entity or maybe multiple entities involved in the development. The development might even change hands a few times, and then ultimately they're purchased by a developer, a builder, basically. And as Hector will explain, Radio Power is both the builder, intends to be both the builder and operator of the solar plant. So with that, maybe I could turn it over to Hector to give an overview of who his company is and what their plans are with these 2 projects.
Good. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
So I'll share
a brief presentation. Let me know if you can see it.
It's coming up there here, I think. Yeah. Oh, that's working at least this morning. Oh, jeez.
Can
Can you see the presentation now?
Yes.
Thanks.
Good. So,
Thanks for the time, and I'm sorry for not being in person. I actually have my flight booked to Syracuse, and it got canceled because of the weather, the storms in the Mid-Atlantic, so I apologize for not being in person. I'll start. So I'm Hector de Lagarde, I'm head of strategy for Radial Power. I'll start with a brief introduction from Radial Power. We're a developer of distributed energy projects, so solar, battery storage, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And we're a relatively new company. We were founded in 2022, but we have very big equity sponsors. Our 2 sponsors are Lotus Infrastructure Partners, was formerly started with Energy, and Energy which they are the energy affiliates of 2 very large national real estate companies, the related companies, and Starwood Capital. So our sponsors are very active in the state of New York. Energy developing a project called Clean Path, 175-mile transmission line from Delaware County to New York City. Lotus Infrastructure owns a couple of gas-fired power plants I think in Onondaga and Lewis County, one around Syracuse area. So we're like the distributed energy solutions provider of these 2 large energy companies. We're a national company. We're developing about 300 megawatts projects currently across the country, ground-mounted mainly in California, Pennsylvania, and New York. And our business model is that we self-develop or acquire these projects and we do the final engineering. We oversee the construction and we're the owner-operator for the long term. So our plan is to once we build these projects, we'll be the owner and operator, and we plan to hold them for the life of the project. And finally, in New York, so we recently acquired from RIC portfolio projects, of which almost half of the capacity is in Oswego County, which is it's the two Baldwin projects and one more project that is in Williamson that one would not be closed yet on, so it will take some time for the closing because there's some other development requirements, but Baldwin is our largest project in the state of New York now. We have an expansion plan. We're planning to buy another similar portfolio in the next few months. So doubling this capacity, and in terms of execution, all of these projects are in final engineering and are expected to start construction sometime late in the summer.
Hector,
I
this
think
is
that's
Kevin.
it.
While you have the map up there, could I just let the board know that the Williamstown project on the map here is Williamstown PV LLC. It's also a project we've approved, worked with RSC Energy, as Hector said. He did say, like, they're not closing on that now. They're not asking for consent at this time, but I could imagine that Radio Power will be back with us at some point in the near future to ask for our consent for that project.
Okay.
So we're just working for the two. Today we're discussing and considering granting consent for Volney and Volney 2 PV.
Okay.
That's correct.
Anything else, Hector?
No, I'll keep it brief on the introduction. Happy to answer any questions.
One thing I want to add is the information that you provided is in DC. What we had approved as part of our projects was in AC, so the numbers may look higher. It's just the conversion from DC to AC. It's not the same. So they're still the same projects in terms of megawatts. One's a 5 megawatt AC project. The other's like 4.8. Yeah, 4.85. So nothing's changed.
And I think that's okay. We normally purchase these projects, and we don't really sign them. Normally when we acquire these projects, anything that was approved by the towns, we just take that approved plan and we build on that approved plan. So we normally don't look to redevelop the projects. We're more of a we're the final owner of the site, so we're not actually looking to redevelop. We're actually looking to build as soon as possible. So.
Hector, what do you see as the timeline going forward?
So right now, the Baldwin projects, they both already have a building permit with RIC filed earlier for the building permit here, and we're finalizing the engineering. So hopefully, we've done pipe testing, which is the final requirement of looking at the depth of actually testing the metal piles on the ground. So we're looking hopefully to start construction in August for these projects. To mobilize to the site, start fencing and clearing. I think this site is almost fully cleared, so we just need to fence it and we would start sometime in August.
So with the agency here, with the IDA, as we've discussed before, you'd look to close fairly in matter of due course after this approval today. We'd move forward with our closing processes and so forth.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that we want to work with the agency, so the approval of this consent doesn't delay the project. So I think that's our target. And in terms of construction timeline, we plan to have the project mechanically completed by the end of the year. Just interconnection will depend on national grid, as you know. Sometimes national grid delays interconnection of these projects, but should be from our side, we plan to have them fully constructed by the end of this year.
Anybody got any questions? Not for him. Okay.
Thank you, Hector.
So all we're doing is approving the ownership transfer, right?
Correct. Yeah. All of our approvals remain intact. Yeah.
Nothing related to what was previously approved is being changed. Just that the owner of the ultimate project would be different.
And what benefits does the IDA
So for this project, it's a good question. A pilot agreement was approved back in early 2023. Sales tax exemption was approved in early 2023. I don't know if a mortgage recording.
It was, yeah.
A mortgage recording. So all three of the typical benefits related to a pilot agreement were approved for the project. Kevin, you got the numbers in front of you, so we could go over those.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the pilot agreement was based on our former policy, so it's at $5,000 per megawatt for 20 years. The mortgage recording tax exemption, I'll start with Valmy and go to Valmy 2. Valmy was 55,163. Valmy 2 is 56,374. Sales tax exemption, Valmy PV was 372,960, and Valmy 2 PV, which is a little bit smaller, was 361,771. So 360 or 360, 370 on sales tax, and 55, 56 on mortgage recording tax.
Yeah, and the pilot payments for both projects together is about $60,000 that we'll be paying to the taxing authorities on land, which right now is sort of vacant farmland. Probably paying less than $1,000 per site right now in taxes. So it's going to have some substantial tax revenues to the communities that have those. These are projects that have. I believe, so in early 2023, the town of Valmy had put in a solar moratorium, but this was a project that was already in process before that started, and the town did go through and fully approve both projects.
Yeah.
Now, are they leasing the land or are they buying the land?
It's a good question.
It's the lease, but
We're leasing it. Yeah.
and then as typical, our exemption on the pilot would only apply to the land essentially inside the fence, the land dedicated to solar farm, fence and driveway, those areas. And we'll get from Hector's team, we'll get a meets and bounds property description, and that's what Kevin works with the assessor to develop a secondary tax parcel, basically, which then the exemption applies to that outline of the solar farm inside the bigger parcel, because these parcels are, well, one's 48 acres and one's about 60 acres, and the solar farms are 30 or 35, depending on which one.
Now, are they still in the ag district or they get ag exemption or anything with their taxes? Or are they considered that or not?
So once these properties are placed, they'll be placed in a kind of a special exemption category for solar projects related to the IDA. Just the footprint of that solar farm. Okay. If there is a separate and distinct exemption that the underlying property owner is entitled to, that's between them and the assessor of the town. But it doesn't sound like it's active farmland, so I'm not sure it would qualify for that exemption. But the solar company only gets one exemption.
Yeah.
That being the IDA exemption.
Yeah, they can't double dip and get both.
They can't double dip.
And it's only for the footprint of the farm, the solar farm itself. The balance of the farmland outside the solar farm is taxable.
It's taxable, but if that farmer still was getting tax exemption because somebody could have been utilizing it,
Yeah, they continue that exemption on the non-IDA controlled, so to speak,
Gotcha.
land.
Okay.
If it still qualifies, if they're still doing farming,
If they're still doing anything there. But if they had an ag exemption for a few years, they have to pay back that taxes then that the solar company is now on, because it's no longer agriculture.
If it's in that, that's something that we don't get involved in, but that would be something that would be triggered at that level.
But the
If it is.
benefit that they're getting from the pilot certainly would outweigh whatever they have to pay back. I mean, they're not paying any.
Yeah, because right now they'd be paying back on the vacant land, so it'd be based on what the taxes would have been on vacant land. So,
Okay.
versus this, which is going to be assessed in the millions of dollars.
Yep.
But that only takes place if it was a project or a property that was in the ag district.
Right.
I'm not aware if it was or was not.
Okay, any other questions or info? We'll entertain a motion to approve consent of the ownership transfer.
I'll make a motion.
Mark?
I'll second.
No? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector.
Thanks, Hector. So now we'll get you a resolution kind of memorializing this, and we can carry forward with closing with those due
Perfect.
diligence lists. So.
Great.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
It was great to meet you and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. Nate, don't end the meeting.
Okay.
Someone, thanks, Hector.
We got somebody else coming up.
Yeah,
All
Chris
right.
Basanto's coming in soon. Thank you.
Okay. So Kevin, just real quick, with this, who notifies the fire district? That ownership is changed, so they know who to reach out to if there's a fire. Because this happens, they're supposed to keep the local fire authorities up to date, right? On who owns it, so they can have the proper notifications and.
It is changed within the Real Property Tax Service, so they do create a different separate tax parcel which will have the information for radio power for that. I don't know if that triggers anything to notify fire departments, though. That's just a change that happens within Real Property Tax Service, to my knowledge. If there's something that we could potentially do to help on that, I don't see an issue with that. I don't know what that process typically is when a property changes hands, though.
These
That
solar
happens.
thing's a new phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
So, I know they had that fire up in Jefferson, I think it was, and it became an issue there about, notifying, the current owners.
Sure.
Right?
Is that something? I guess that's just a question I have for process when a property typically is just sold normally. Is the fire department notified who the new owner is? I don't know if that happens.
The
or not.
building permit in some way may be a trigger for the fire department. They get, so they know the property, know where the shut-offs are and things like that. I mean, if a new factory was built,
Yeah.
the fire department
Sure.
would come and
Yeah.
familiarize themselves with the buildings, but I don't.
I'm just saying that
I don't know.
there's nothing in play that would trigger that. Perhaps we should do it ourselves, right? Just
Sure.
Send
It wouldn't be a hard ask to do, even if it was something for all solar projects.
And maybe
in
to the
Oswego County.
town as well, just to the town clerk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But these things do, when something like this happens and a new entity comes in and acquires it, that does trigger, hey, there's a new entity. I will say with solar projects that sometimes they change hands 2, 3, 4 times, and it can be hard for entities to know who actually is, owner versus managing, entity and other things like that. So if there's something we can do to help that.
And the change in real property tax service wouldn't even necessarily list radio power because it's the
It's
landowner and us.
it's a lease,
would
not an
potentially be
ownership.
listed
So
as,
that's
yeah.
probably why there's been issues maybe with some of those things where it's a lease and not an ownership
I
change.
don't think it's a real big issue unless there's battery storage. I think that was the issue. Right?
Well, this project doesn't have that.
Yeah,
We haven't come across.
I haven't
it
heard
yet.
of any solar panels catching on fire.
No. No.
How does the mortgage exemption work when it's a lease?
So they have to do a mortgage on that's a good question. They have to do a mortgage still on all the equipment. So it can be used for that. Because of the length of the lease, I think that you could still do a mortgage because of
leasehold mortgage.
it's a leasehold mortgage because it is a 20-year, lease that they're doing for it. But yeah,
So
they,
it's seen as a mortgage? I mean,
Yes.
it's not just, we're not saying calling it a mortgage, it's an actual mortgage, because it's not real estate, or they're saying it's actual real estate, just the equipment?
They're mortgaging their rights, their interests under the lease and the equipment on it. So it is a recorded mortgage. In fact, Connexcare will be going through the same thing with a leasehold mortgage on improvements they do to a leased building. So we're
So
gonna
they
go
treat
back to.
they treat the equipment like a building, what you're saying?
Becomes like the asset.
I don't know that the
Okay.
equipment is listed.
Well,
in the
the
mortgage.
land itself
Yeah.
is mortgage. You have to have the underlying property owner would commit to it as well, signing off on it.
I don't know if New York State would consider it a building. I know where you're going, Tim.
Right. And then the solar panels are fixtures.
Yeah, with
that
the
are-
useful life that exceeds, the length of the mortgage. I could see it being an issue if it was equipment with a 5 to 7 year life. That would be, a little bit more of a challenge to do that. But yeah, that's
Do we know what standard mortgage on these is? Because the useful life's not 30, so if you give them a 30-year mortgage, I don't know how they would do that.
I don't know.
Okay. Just curious,
Yeah,
it's
I
interesting
don't
to
know.
me.
We might have
so-
seen the mortgage documents in the past closing, I suppose, but I'm not sure.
Don't recall.
So just on the sidebar, we did tour the power plants last week, and I did ask the question, do we produce more power than we can get out of this county? And the answer is yes, we do.
Yeah, we produce almost 4,000% more power than we can get out. We export it. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's you're exporting power and you're bringing money back into Oswego County from other places. But yeah, we're probably the largest or second largest in the state in terms of power producer. So
Well, did he say that they were looking for a line from Delaware County to New York City? Said something about that?
Yes. Which he said they had gas-fired plants.
Yeah.
So if the state's shutting those down, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, does it?
Yeah.
Doesn't fall into the master plan. And
You know,
I caught that too, and I was thinking,
I still think that there's going to be a place for gas-fired plants as peaking because they have the ability to turn on quick, make power when it's really hot, really cold. You can't just get out of that. You know, I mean, it may be in your long-term plan to not have them be baseload power, but you can't just say you're done completely.
Well, the government can someday.
So I think we'll see more on that, but yeah.
Well, I was just wondering, because of what they were talking about at the new plant there, when he was saying that they would love to have more transmission lines to go south.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like, well, these guys are looking to go from, Delaware to the city. Well, what about Oswego to get caught up in all of that?
A lot of the challenge was getting power. The big obstacle in the past was in Marcy, New York, just outside of Utica. There was a big sort of bottleneck for power, and so you could get it there, but it was getting it from there downstate. So they've been making some major improvements to that. But
they did say they were working on a power line now.
He said that's what he said. He would love to have more transmission lines. We've got so much power, but we haven't got enough lines to go. Okay.
But we give them a call.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I guess we'll move on to number 5, Novellus.
Sure. Okay, so I can do this. So we've been working together with Novellus as well as New York State DOT and the Office of Comptroller to develop a grant agreement between the parties, and we have received that now from New York State DOT. As part of this process, it is required that the applicant entity pass a resolution agreeing to the grant agreement. We have had our legal counsel review it, and they have developed a resolution for us in front of us today. The resolution authorizing the execution of a grant agreement in relation to certain grant proceeds in connection with the project for Novellus Corporation. So this is something that we had originally had in a resolution to apply for the grant. We were successful in getting the grant approved. Now the hard work starts, and we have to do the administration for the grant with Novellus. So what we're asking for today is the IDA to approve us authorizing and executing that grant agreement with me having the authority to execute that with New York State. So still moving forward on it, and our talks with Novellus is that their plan is to start construction later this summer. I believe they're looking at late July, August is sort of their construction period, and then they're also going to be purchasing some rail car movers as part of the project. They can kind of get started on that sooner, but those have sort of a little bit of a wait time. So as soon as this grant agreement is executed with New York State, they can start spending money. Until then, they can't spend money until we have that agreement. So that's sort of where we're at right now.
How much was it for?
The grant was for just shy of $2.8 million. It was actually $2,797,212, which at the time was 80% of their project cost, which was just shy of $3.5 million. Since then, their project cost has gone up to $3,984,712, but their grant is still locked into what that original grant was. So originally it was going to be about 80% of the project. Now it's about 75% of the project.
I'll make the motion to accept the agreement.
I'll second.
Mark, Tricia, any other comments or questions? How does this work? Does the state keep the money and then we
So,
just submit the bills?
What's going
or-
to happen is once they have the grant agreement, then it's saying that, okay, we've determined that your project costs are eligible it's a reimbursement program. So Novellus, we're going to be the middleman. The Novellus is going to provide us their invoices, and then they need to show that, hey, they did the project according to what they said, which means that they have a certain requirement for MWB business in that. If it's 30% for this project, they're going to have to provide us all of the invoices, and then on an invoice basis, we will get a check for whatever that 80% of that number up to $2.797 million, and after that, Novellus is responsible for any cost above that. So we're going to have we will be submitting the invoices to New York State on behalf of Novellus. The state will then be sending checks to us, which we then disperse to Novellus. Similar to how when the city did DRI and other things like that, well, maybe not necessarily the DRI one, but when they restore New York and things where it has to kind of flow through the entity to get to the company. So there'll be some administration, and Nate and I and Kevin will be involved in that
Are we
process.
collecting fees for this?
We're not collecting any fees. for this.
Alright. Kind of what I thought.
Any fees on any associated expansion pilots or no?
We can talk about that later.
Okay, all those in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Upcoming events.
Okay, so I think we're going to start because if we're getting into the summer season here, we got a lot of different events going on. Just to kind of give you guys a heads up, and keep you on track for these. So tomorrow we actually have a ribbon cutting at Wacko Gringo here in the city of Oswego. This is a project that the IDA provided financial assistance to earlier this year. So it'd be great if we could have your attendance at that. It's not required, but it'd be nice to see IDA members there. Other things that are coming up in the near future, Operation Oswego County and IDA are hosting a CFA workshop. That's the state grant program that comes around once a year. That'll be held on June 5th from 3 to 5 down at CNY Arts Center in Fulton, which CNY Arts Center is actually another project that was funded by the state a few years ago. And then the other one I wanted to bring to your attention is the Operation Oswego County Annual Meeting, which will be held on June 13th, 8 a.m. at the Lake Ontario Conference Center. So we've got a lot of things coming up in the next couple of weeks, just to keep them in front of your minds. These are the people will be attending. So and my thought is not necessarily for every month going forward, but ones where you have multiple events like this happening, just to kind of keep you guys front of mind for those.
And I love that Alex sends a appointment request because that's very helpful.
Yes. Yep.
Alright. Number 7, proposed interstate IDA legislation.
So this was something that came to my attention within the last couple of weeks from our partners at New York State Economic Development Council. Both the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate is considering amending IDA legislation specifically related to IDA members. They are considering adding, as of right now, there is no requirement for interest groups to be part of an IDA board. What is being considered is that 2 of the 7 IDA members on any IDA board across the state, could be at town level, county level, village level, one would have to be there representing labor, and one would have to be there representing the school board or superintendent. So I'm not asking the IDA to develop any sort of position related to it, just to kind of give you an update on that. I do think it is somewhat short-sighted that there are multiple interest groups that are part of the business community, people from business, people from towns, people from the county level, labor and school districts, but they're only determining that the school district and the labor have to be a represented parties on IDA boards. So the way that their current resolution reads is that if those entities are not on current boards, boards would temporarily be increased by 2 people to represent both of those until other vacancies happen. That brings the board back down to 7 or less. So an IDA board by law is 7 or less members. So there has been some tweaks to this since it originally came out. There was no clarification of who actually had the ability to appoint. It was sort of left open, so it wasn't, as of right now, the way it works is that the highest elected official of the body that appoints can make those appointments to an IDA board. This was sort of left unclear who would do it. It sense that it would still be made by the same entity, but they would have to represent those groups. So the legislative session is coming to a close soon. We are not sure if this will be voted on or not, if this will even make it to a vote. But it has gone back through committee several times, and Rules Committee and it's been tweaked. So I'm not sure if it will or not. I think it has a higher chance of getting to the floor for a vote than some of the other ideas that they've had in recent past. So just wanted to give you that information, and also just to state too that the IDA board, and currently, we have a representative who is from labor, but it wasn't a required person that had to be on the board. In the past, we've had great representatives from school districts and other things, so it's not a bad thing. It's just the fact that you're being required to do it creates some challenges, and there's some other questions that are unanswered. If that person retires from a career in labor, does that mean they're automatically not representing them anymore and they need to be replaced, or And the same thing with someone from the school board or superintendent. If they leave that position, are they automatically not representing anymore? And you're out of compliance the second that happens. So there's some sort of things that haven't really been figured out yet. So we'll see where this goes. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of give you that information. The language was tweaked, as recently as May 25th. So they're still sort of working on this thing. So we'll see if it makes it or not. It was a hot button item when I was at the New York State EDC annual meeting last week, so we'll see where that goes. Any questions related to that?
Well, I believe Pat is retired.
Yes.
And I think he still sits on some boards or committees in labor, but
It's a gray area.
question would be, does he qualify?
Well, I think these things that, sort of a half-baked idea, maybe it's a three-quarter baked idea now, and, there's some things that are sort of left out in gray area, you don't know how that works. So, the way it is now, there's no required people that need to be on there, so they serve at the pleasure of the appointing body, which is the chairman of the legislature and legislature. But going forward, if they were to pass this, it would create some challenges, and how are people then referred for appointment? There's just a lot of things that aren't really, I think, figured out with this, and we'll have to see where it goes.
You also have to find somebody who's possibly one of those positions that's willing to serve on the board.
That's another thing too, is that, it's not necessarily, it's not a paid position. There is quite, for some people, there's quite a bit of travel involved in it. And you may have difficulty trying to find people specifically from those areas that are willing and it's one to get them on, it's another to retain them and keep them on. So it's something we'll see. I think it's going to impact rural counties specifically.
Okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Actual amendment. We didn't get to that.
So the amendment was just that right now there is no required people to have to serve on the boards. The amendment is that they're looking to put in that required 2 board members of any IDA board will have to be somebody from labor and somebody from a school board or superintendent.
I got that, so what are we asking?
I'm not asking anything, I just wanted to give you guys the information.
Okay.
Provide the,
Proposing or
because this is something that by this time next month, this could be law, and we may have to consider, our compliance with that law.
Understood.
So,
Okay.
Has the state taken have they taken a position on this? I know the New York State Business Council opposes it, but
yeah, I have not seen anything from. I know that the New York State Economic Development Council opposes it. I'm not sure where NISAC and other entities like that are on it. I'm sure they're aware of it. This is something that kind of crept up pretty quickly in the last 2 weeks. It sort of popped up on May 17th. It's the first we'd seen.
Talk to Barkley about it at all?
Mm-hmm. Yep, he's aware.
Okay.
And Mannion.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that topic? So it looks like we need to move into executive session. So can we,
I'll make a motion.
Tricia, Mark, Kevin, can you tell the viewers why we're going into executive session?
Yep, a couple of different reasons to discuss the financial circumstances of a particular individual or corporation being one. The other is pending litigation. So there's actually 2 reasons we're going in today.
Okay.
Who were those votes again?
Tricia and Mark.
Okay, thank you.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move into executive session at 9:22.
Okay.
I think we're.
All right, let me just give Chris the
How do I know I'm really in? I gotta switch back over then.
Yeah,
You'll know you are when
go to the OBS for.
the sound is.
Got an error going on YouTube. It's not receiving it.
That's okay.
Just gonna give Chris a call and tell him to join. Teams.
Over here. I think it's still recording.
Oh, thank you.
coming on. Brandon?
I'll make a motion to come out of executive session.
Motion by Mark, seconded by
I'll second.
Tricia.
10:52.
10:52 it is. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And so, with Nestle site, what do we have to make a motion on this at this point?
Right.
So,
The authorization to proceed.
authorization to proceed with the plan as outlined, as Kevin has outlined here.
Is outlined in the letter of intent? Yeah.
Right, so it's a resolution authorizing the CEO to execute a proposed letter of intent dated May 13, 2024, with the city of Fulton and 533 South 4th Street LLC. That's pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 2897, subsection 7, double I, and the agency's disposition of property guidelines. Conditioned upon the execution of the letter of intent by all three parties by August 1st of 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Tricia, Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ken One Lodge subordination request.
I'll make the motion.
Tim. We need a second?
No, I'll second.
Mark. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Pilot EDF report, we don't need to do anything, right? We just need to
So we
accept it.
do, we're gonna increase funding for
That's
one
right.
of the line items.
Tim, you wanna make that motion?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to increase the commitment from 100 to 350,000 in the Upper County Economic Advancement Plan line for initiatives as needed, infrastructure studies, site feasibility, etc.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the delinquent loan report. Anything we gotta do there?
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept it made.
Mark made the motion,
I'll second.
seconded by, well, no, I'll second this one. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And there's nothing we need to do about the pilots at this point. Just keep moving forward the way you are, right? Any other business, Kevin, or?
The only thing I would say is that the IDA shirts are here, so on your way out, we can help you get the shirts that you've got, so don't leave without it. That's all I have for other business.
Okay.
Is the New York Forward funds come through for Phoenix?
They did, they came through last week, 15